modern-day Japan. In a busy office, Ryoma Takabayashi sits at his desk, a man of impressive build doing the work of a systems engineer. His colleagues crowd around him, marveling that someone with the physique of a superhero is wasting it behind a keyboard. The city glitters late into the night as Ryoma finally sends off his last report. His colleagues suggest ramen on the way home, and Ryoma warns him about clogged arteries. The colleague shrugs it off, noting that with this lifestyle they could drop dead any day. What exactly are we living for? Ryoma's life plays out in a grim loop. As a boy, he was thrown to the floor and told to toughen up. As a man, he drinks too much at company parties, gets sick in an alley, and crawls back to his desk before dawn. Ryoma floats in a vast white void, eyes closed, at peace. He tells himself he never hated life, that he had his share of fun. Then he opens his eyes and looks around confused. Three figures stand before him in the luminous silence. An elderly man with a long white beard, a beautiful woman in flowing robes, and a young boy wearing a laurel wreath. The old man speaks a single word of welcome. They declare themselves gods. The elder introduces himself as Gain the Creator. The woman smiles and names herself Lulusia, Goddess of Love. The boy grins and says his name is Kufo, God of Life. Ryoma stands before them, speechless. Ryoma apologizes for his silence and introduces himself. Then he asks the blunt question he cannot hold back, whether he is dead. The three gods regard him with calm, unreadable expressions. Gain confirms it. Ryoma passed away in his sleep, and they brought his soul here. Ryoma absorbs the news quietly, which shocks Lulusia and Kufo. He explains it simply does not feel real yet. Ryoma reflects on his instant noodles and sleepless nights, admitting he always expected an early grave. Lulusia and Kufo exchange bewildered looks. A table and tea appear from nowhere, and Gain invites everyone to sit. Ryoma, now calmer, asks how he actually died. Gain delivers the verdict with solemn gravity. 4 sneezes in his sleep shifted Ryoma's head off the pillow, and when it struck the hard floor, blood vessels in his brain burst. Ryoma stares, completely blank. The absurdity lands like a hammer. Ryoma has survived a drunk boss swinging a beer bottle at his head, a steel pipe from street thugs, and countless beatings from his father in the name of training. He cannot accept that sneezing is what finished him. Ryoma collapses on all fours, howling at the injustice of it. The gods watch him with pity. Hours later, they are sitting calmly at the table while Ryoma's small figure is still crumpled in the background. Kufo speculates that physical pride was the issue. Gain asks if Ryoma has calmed down, then hints at why he was summoned by calling it an old chestnut. Ryoma's eyes light up instantly. He rattles off the whole isekai trope on his own, asking whether he has a mission. Gain smiles and confirms a young body has been prepared for him in another world. A young boy walks through a lush forest, sword on his back. Gain explains that the mission is simply to live. Ryoma looks puzzled. Gain describes a world rich in magic, where countless creatures feed on it and the supply is running thin. Lulusia explains the crisis. Magical energy in their world of Sealfall can no longer keep up with demand. Without it, magical beasts will die and civilization will crumble. Their solution is to harvest Earth's unused magic, and that is where Ryoma comes in. Kufo explains that by sending Ryoma's soul to Sealfall, the two worlds connect and magic flows across. Ryoma listens, then fidgets and asks the question he really wants answered: whether he will be able to use magic himself. The gods exchange amused looks. All three gods confirm it enthusiastically. Ryoma bows, then cheers, then blushes with excitement. Gain offers to bestow divine power and all elements during the transfer. Ryoma panics that he will stand out, but Lulusia reassures him. She adds quietly that he is rather cute when he gets worked up. Ryoma accepts all the elements and asks only that he not look like a freak in the new world, which surprises the gods. Gain moves on to a formal contract. Ryoma signs with a quill, quietly marveling that paperwork follows him even into the afterlife. The transfer begins. Light swirls around Ryoma as his body turns translucent. Gain tells him not to be afraid, then adds one last thing. They have grown fond of him and want him to be more himself. Ryoma asks what that means. Gain reminds him that when he got excited, his whole manner changed, and that was his true self. Kufo confirms it. Lulusia promises they will always be watching over him. The three gods stand together, surrounded by light. A young boy stands by a great tree, looking out over a snowy landscape and distant mountains. The gods' voices carry through the light. This is his life, to live however he pleases. They note that he has always tried to do everything at once and stressed himself out in the process. This time he is free. Ryoma's translucent soul weeps. Tears stream down his face as he wipes his eyes with his arm, surrounded by a gentle glow. He thanks them over and over and swears he will never forget what they have done for him. Gain, Lulusha, and Kufo smile warmly together. Lulusha waves with both hands, telling Ryoma to find a church when he reaches a town. She explains that with the oracle skill they can still catch up from time to time. Ryoma raises his hand in farewell and promises. Ryoma's soul streaks towards Sealfall like a comet. The three gods watch from their realm, their faces gentle and proud. The light plunges through clouds and forest canopy, and a great pillar of radiance erupts from the earth below. Go now, with the grace of the gods. A small boy sits up in a forest clearing, blinking at a book and a large bag beside him. He looks at his tiny hands in disbelief. It was not a dream. He really has become a child. Ryoma reads the god's guidebook. He is in the forest of Ghana in the kingdom of Rafal, placed here to avoid suspicion. A hand-drawn map marks his location, with Lulusha's little icon pointing cheerfully at a spot labeled. Kufo's notes advise him to pick medicinal herbs and fruit as he walks, with a field guide included. Ryoma sets off into the trees. The forest opens onto a river and a waterfall, cliffs rising behind it. Ryoma smiles. It is near water, he thinks. A perfect place to put down stakes. Ryoma walks for hours without tiring and wonders at his own stamina. He flips to the status page in the back of the guidebook. His magic skills are all at level 1, but his physical skills are expert level across the board. He recognizes every one of them from 39 years of part-time and full-time jobs. Ryoma marvels that the gods even incorporated his former life into his new self. Then something rustles behind him. He spins on reflex and kicks, and a full-grown tree snaps in half. He stares at the stump in complete shock. His strength is the same as before, but his child's body is so light that his senses cannot keep up. He tells himself to take it easy and get used to it. Then he stops. A small, round, translucent creature with 2 tiny eyes sits in the grass and stares back at him. A slime. Ryoma nearly loses his composure. It looks exactly like one from a video game. He checks the guidebook, realizes he has taming magic, and tries to follow the instructions. He feels like an old man struggling with a new appliance. He closes his eyes and concentrates. Something flows beneath his skin, warm and alive. Magic. Ryoma reaches inward, selects the element he wants from the 12 now living inside him, and pictures the spell. A complex magic circle blazes to life on the ground. Ryoma stands over the circle with one arm outstretched, the slime at its center. He breathes in, focuses, and shouts the command, tame. 3 years pass. A reptilian monster crashes through the forest, its claws shaking the ground. It opens its jaws and roars. A calm pair of eyes watches it from the shadows. Ryoma, now older, stands in a clearing surrounded by dozens of slimes. Across from him looms a massive horned dragon-like creature. He points forward and orders his sticky slimes to release their strongest adhesive solution. The forest fills with the hiss of threads. The monster is engulfed in white webbing, thrashing and shrieking until it goes still. The dust settles. Ryoma calls his slimes together and tells them to head home. He walks away smiling, the creature's enormous tail visible in the foreground. 3 years in the forest of Ghana, he reflects, and it has been really great. Ryoma steps into his cave home, a warm space with a bed, shelves of jars, and slimes scattered everywhere. He holds up a large knife, grins at his companions, and announces the best part of living here, throwing himself into slime research. He butchers a monster with practiced efficiency, sorting the parts into 3 containers: meat, bones and horns, and offal. The cave fills with the sound of his blade. When the last piece is sorted, he calls it done. It started with a single slime he kept as a pet. One day its color changed, and worried it was sick, he used appraisal. Slimes are the lowest life form in the ecosystem and can barely find food in the wild. By feeding them, he realized he could produce evolved varieties that could never exist in nature. The slime was evolving into something entirely new. Acid slimes thrive on bones and horns and secrete a highly acidic fluid. Ryoma dumps a basket of hard scraps in front of them. Scavenger slimes devour waste and garbage. He brings them their food scraps with equal care. Cleaner slimes love dirty water and secrete a solution that both cleanses and neutralizes odors. Ryoma shows them to a counter with soapy water. Poison slimes, though few survived the initial trials, multiplied faster than any other kind after ingesting the poisonous plants he collected for them. Ryoma holds up a large pale slime, saving the best for last. He recalls how he found green caterpillars while hunting and fed them to the sticky slimes. This was the first evolution he ever witnessed, right at the beginning. He tells a few slimes to check the traps and heads back out himself. The sticky slimes shoot threads between the trees as he passes, useful for catching prey. The sun is bright. He admits to himself that at first it felt like a wasted opportunity to live in seclusion, but lately he has been thinking this laid-back life might not be so bad after all. Then he steps into a clearing and stops. 4 men are in the forest. One lies on the ground clutching a bleeding wound. Another stands over him with a sword drawn. Ryoma's inner monologue about his peaceful life trails off mid-sentence. The injured man is in serious trouble and needs medicine. Ryoma moves toward them. A sword sings from its scabbard in an instant, and the light-haired man levels the blade directly at Ryoma and demands to know who he is. High above, Gain, Lulusia, and Kufo look down at Ryoma through a circular window of light. He is absorbed in his slime research, his magic is coming along well, and his home has become something wonderful. What matters most, Lulusia says, is that he is having fun. Gain admits he did not expect Ryoma to spend 3 full years in the forest. Lulusia falls silent, then turns sharp. She wants to know what the god of Earth was thinking, taking a human's happiness away and calling it a trial. Gain explains that trials are normally imposed on many people to help them overcome a crisis and gain power in return. Using one on a single person simply to cause suffering is a perversion of the ability. Kufo notes that at least it leveled up Ryoma's body and skills nicely, which earns him a look. Lulusia is furious. The power Ryoma received was useless in his everyday life, and his father's influence made everything worse. She does not say more about the father, but her expression does. The scene fades to light and clouds as she says simply that she hopes he can regain his happiness in this life. Chapter 2. Cross-Cultural Exchange. Ryoma walks a forest path toward a group of 4 men. One stands with a sword drawn. 3 others are on the ground behind him. The trees are lush and the tension is immediate. Ryoma is startled. He has not spoken to another person in so long that words will not come. He panics internally while the armed men stare him down. Then a man with light hair steps forward and apologizes for drawing swords so suddenly, asking what Ryoma is doing here. Ryoma tries to explain he was hunting and holds out a small bottle of medicine, but his speech comes out broken and halting. Reinhardt Jamil takes the bottle, understands, and apologizes again for the misunderstanding. A female companion examines it and confirms it is the real thing. Hughes lies on the ground behind them, eyes closed and sweating. Hughes is already looking better. The woman thanks Ryoma for the medicine, noting she had run out of MP for healing magic. Ryoma watches them and decides they are not bad people. He spreads his arms wide and offers, in his still broken sentences, to let Hughes rest at his home. Ryoma casts barrier release and a massive magic circle blazes across the cliff face, revealing a hidden cave entrance. Reinhardt stares, wondering how a child uses such difficult magic. Then a swarm of slimes comes bounding back from the forest carrying prey. The guards draw their weapons in alarm. Ryoma throws himself between the guards and his slimes, shouting for everyone to check the traps. He had forgotten the order he gave them. He apologizes for not warning the group sooner. Reinhardt tells him not to be so reserved, then smiles with nostalgia. His own first familiar was a slime. Ryoma asks if Reinhardt is a tamer. He says former, explaining that his family has been beast tamers for generations, but he stopped signing new contracts after his familiars were hurt in battle. He once contracted a red horse and a blizzard ape. Ryoma has no idea what those are, but they sound powerful. Reinhardt shrugs and says his real talent was always the sword. As the group walks, Ryoma reads the situation. Generations of tamers, 4 guards, fine traveling gear. This man is someone important. Memories of overbearing bosses from his past life flicker up, and Ryoma's hands tighten. He reminds himself the gods said this country is the most open-minded about social status. He leads them inside and points to the bed. Reinhardt thanks Ryoma for lending them his bed. Ryoma offers to fetch a potion, which delights the female companion. The group looks around the cave and marvels that it is in better shape than they expected. The group puzzles over the single bed and the signs of long habitation. Could a small boy really have lived here alone for years? One suggests he might be an elf or older than he looks. Ryoma returns with potions and the woman thanks him warmly, promising to return the favor. Ryoma tells them he makes the potions himself. 4 jaws drop simultaneously. He then brings water created with magic, and the group starts whispering about barrier magic and shop-quality potions. Ryoma wonders what counts as normal in this world, because he genuinely cannot tell. Ryoma introduces himself and asks for names in return. The man with light hair smiles, apologizes for the late introduction, and reveals he is Reinhard Jamil, next heir to the Duke House of Jamil. Ryoma's mind goes blank. Then he drops to the floor in a full bow and shouts an apology for his rudeness. Reinhardt tells Ryoma there is no need to be so humble and that he does not need to change how he speaks either. Ryoma is even more flustered now. A young man named Camille introduces himself as the group's magician, then thanks Ryoma sincerely. Without him, Hughes might not have survived. Zeph introduces himself as the group's scout and trap specialist. Then Jill, the light-haired man, who first drew his sword, apologizes for pointing it at Ryoma. Ryoma tells him that staying alert was only natural. Jill coughs into his hand and explains that Reinhardt is very open-minded, so Ryoma should just speak normally. Everyone is speaking lightly on purpose, Ryoma realizes, to keep him from feeling frightened. He thanks them quietly. It has been a long time since people looked out for him like this. Reinhardt begins explaining how they ended up in the forest. They were on their way home when bandits attacked. After dealing with the bandits, a black bear appeared and injured Hughes. Their horses fled, so they cut through the forest to get him back as fast as possible. Reinhardt then turns the question around and asks about Ryoma, noting the house shows signs of long use. Ryoma braces himself. This is the moment for the backstory the gods prepared. Gain told him to say he learned everything from adventurer grandparents. Lulusha reminded him that wisdom coming with age is understood even in this world. Kufo promised the grandparent story would be believable, having modeled it on real people and already discussed it with them. Ryoma did not want to use the cover story, but there is no choice now. He tells them his grandparents passed away 3 years ago. The group erupts in shock. 3 years? Ryoma sits small at the table and admits he was afraid a village would hate him as a stranger. The group stares at him with expressions of quiet pity. Reinhardt leans forward and says he understands the situation, but he is not comfortable with the idea of a child living here alone. Even with the skill to survive it, it is too dangerous. Ryoma realizes they are worried about him and tells them not to be. He asks them to wait a moment and produces a compact identification crystal. Camille explains how it works. Criminals glow red, everyone else blue, and it reads name, age, race, and any skills above level 4. Ryoma tells them he likes his life here and does not want to be forced to move. He places his hand on the crystal and waits. The crystal glows blue. Ryoma exhales in relief. Then Reinhardt sees the numbers on the status board and his voice breaks. He shouts that the levels are too high. He passes it to the others and they crowd around it, stunned. Physical and mental pain tolerance above level 7, expert level, and then some. Reinhardt stares at Ryoma, sweating. What kind of environment produced these numbers in a child? Someone tries to mention the lack of combat skills as a soft landing, but the room knows that is not the real concern. Ryoma offers to prepare dinner, and the group thanks him. Then Hughes appears in the doorway, laughing and rubbing the back of his head. He tells Ryoma he was sure he was going to die this time, and thanks him. Ryoma asks if Hughes can make it back on his own. Hughes teases him, saying he heard Ryoma was against going to town, and assumed he hated people. Ryoma says simply that he cares for the injured. Hughes laughs harder, then staggers, goes pale, and admits he is a bit dizzy. Ryoma hands Hughes a blood-thickening agent and explains he has not replaced enough blood. Hughes thanks him cheerfully, then recoils from the smell. Before he can refuse, 2 of the others grab him and force it down, pointing out they cannot have him fainting on the road. One of the men laughs while Hughes sputters that this time he really almost died. Hughes then places a hand on Ryoma's head and tells him not to look so sad. His life was saved because of Ryoma, and that is something to be glad about. Hughes gives Ryoma his name and tells him to come to the town of Gonago if he ever needs help. The whole group waves goodbye as they head back through the rocky forest. Ryoma watches them go. 3 long years, and he finally spoke with people from this world. It was exhausting and strange. He thinks of Hughes offering help, of Reinhardt's concern, of Jill's awkward kindness. They were good people. A slime tugs at him and asks what to do next. Down the trail, the group discusses Ryoma. His tolerance skills suggest he was treated harshly in his past. No wonder he feared going to a village. Reinhardt walks quietly, thinking. The others press him. He is a father. Surely he can think of something. He raises a hand and admits he cannot decide what is best for the boy right away. Reinhardt resolves to ask for advice when they return home. The walled city of Gimmel sits in the distance. In the foreground, a massive boar-like creature charges through the trees. then is struck by a tremendous invisible force and sent flying. Small circular shapes scatter around it. 2 weeks later, Ryoma is hunting with his slimes, lost in thought about how quickly the time with those travelers has started to feel nostalgic. A slime jumps at him. He snaps back, apologizes for spacing out, and tells everyone to catch their prey fast. Hughes comes striding out of the trees with several men behind him, waving and announcing he has come to repay his debt. Ryoma stares in disbelief. Just when he was thinking about them, they actually came, and there is someone else with them. Eliaria Jamal steps into the light, adjusting her elegant hat. She is 11 years old and carries herself with the quiet refinement of a duke's daughter. Ryoma looks up at her, stunned. Eliaria looks at Ryoma with curious eyes. Ryoma wonders if she is a child. Then Hughes comes bounding over, grabs him by the shoulders, and announces he brought souvenirs, though perhaps a few too many, and that Reinhardt and his family came along as well. Ryoma says they can all come over. Before the words are fully out, Eliaria dashes away shouting for her father. Hughes blinks, wondering when she moved. Ryoma glances at his slimes and figures things will probably be fine. The Jamil family arrives in force. Elise Jamil asks if that boy is Ryoma. Reinbach Jamil, the former duke, marvels that contracting so many slimes is supposed to be extremely difficult. Eliaria urges her father to hurry. Ryoma notices the maids in full uniform and wonders privately how they managed to walk through the forest in those. Reinhardt introduces his father Reinbach, his wife Elise, and his daughter Eliaria. Eliaria curtsies. Ryoma bows and introduces himself, apologizing in advance for the modest hospitality. The whole family watches him with quiet surprise at his manners. Reinbach tells Ryoma there is no need for formality. Eliaria looks at the sea of slimes and calls the number incredible. Ryoma admits that after the group left, the slimes divided again. There are now about 1,500 of them. The word 1,500 lands like a dropped stone. Ryoma tried limiting their food to slow the divisions, but the slimes started shaking with what looked like distress. He wondered if they could fuse together like in a video game. Then he found a solution. Ryoma spreads his arms wide. A massive, translucent creature towers over him, 3 dark nuclei visible inside its body. The Jamil family and Hughes go rigid with shock. Eliaria covers her face with her hands. Reinbach stares. Ryoma announces it simply, big sticky slime. Ryoma explains that in this form the slimes take up less space and need less food. He believes it is a kind of self-defense mechanism. Reinhardt and Elise shout in unison. Contracting a big slime is supposed to be impossible. Ryoma blinks and says it is just small slimes lumped together, as anyone can see. 100 slimes form a big slime. 500 form a huge slime. The only rule for taming is 1 contract at a time, and a big slime looks like 1 creature because it has 1 nucleus. Ryoma finishes his explanation. The entire group stands in a line, staring forward in silence. Elise bursts into tears of joy and hugs Ryoma, declaring he has solved a mystery that every tamer in history failed to crack. Reinhardt shouts in agreement. Sebas the butler calmly asks everyone to compose themselves. Later, walking through the forest, Reinhardt explains that big slimes are notoriously hard to fight, and many tamers tried and failed to contract them. No one had succeeded before now. Reinbach confirms it was a subject of historical research, now apparently solved by a child in the forest. Elise asks what they should do. Reinhardt says they should report it to the Tamers Guild. Ryoma thinks back to the guidebook and recalls reading about the Tamers Guild. Announcing this would cause a stir. He considers the group chattering around him and thinks that this might actually be his chance to leave the forest. Reinbach tells him they will not force him and reminds him what he discovered is truly incredible. Ryoma nods, still processing. Ryoma invites the group inside. The guards stare at the long wooden table and matching chairs as if they appeared by magic, because they did. Ryoma set it all up while the family was out. He serves tea. Reinhardt notes there are a lot of new things. The tea is praised for its fragrance and taste. Hughes and a guard immediately ask about the honey. Ryoma says he gathered it himself, so they are welcome to it. Eliaria drinks with sparkling eyes. Hughes practically shoves the other guard aside to get his share first. Eliaria notices the honey has more than 1 flavor. Sebas identifies lemon-like lemon in it. Ryoma confirms he also added zuzuya root. Sebas is amazed. He had only ever thought of zuzuya as a medicinal herb. Ryoma explains it works well with meat and fish too. The maids ask who taught Ryoma to cook. He almost says his past life, catches himself, and credits his grandmother. The maids believe it instantly. Reinhardt remembers they almost forgot the souvenirs. He calls for Sebas, who steps forward and opens a dark swirling portal. Sebas pulls item after item from the portal: a lamp, writing tools, preserved food, clothing. The pile grows enormous. Reinhardt says they did not know what Ryoma would like, so they brought everything. Ryoma stares at the mountain of gifts and realizes every single item is something he has been missing. He thanks them, deeply moved. Reinhardt explains that they came to the forest for a reason beyond repaying Ryoma. His family are tamers, and Eliaria has reached the age for her first contract. He wanted to find a slime for her. Ryoma listens, then brightens. Ryoma points to a spot on a map where slimes are often found near a river. Reinhardt thanks him and prepares to head out. He leaves 2 maids to help Ryoma with cleaning. Ryoma turns back and starts to say he was planning to clean anyway. The maids appear instantly and insist on helping. Eliaria, meanwhile, has already slipped away to find her father. Ryoma tells the maids he will clean with the slimes, and it will be done in no time. They look baffled. He gestures to several round, flat creatures on the floor and introduces them: cleaner slimes. Eliaria leans in with the maids to look, asking if a slime is really going to clean the dishes. Ryoma pulls out a goblin's loincloth, which causes immediate horror. He explains it is the dirtiest thing he owns, then places it inside a large transparent slime. The slime begins to spin it rapidly, surrounded by bubbles. Ryoma watches and thinks it looks exactly like a washing machine. The loincloth emerges perfectly white and completely odorless. The group crowds around it in disbelief. It was a goblin's loincloth, the maid says. It is even white now. Eliaria asks if the slime melted the filth away. Ryoma confirms. Cleaner slimes eat dirt and secrete a solution that cleanses and deodorizes. He then demonstrates by putting his own bandaged hand into the slime. Everyone screams that his hand will melt. He tells them calmly it is fine. He pulls out a clean, unharmed hand. They only eat dirt, he explains, not living flesh unless commanded. Eliaria's eyes go wide. She realizes that with a cleaner slime, anything from clothes to one's own body can be washed effortlessly. She grabs Ryoma's arm and announces she wants one. Elise tries to intervene, but Ryoma admits he does know how to get a cleaner slime. He hesitates, adding that he would not recommend the method to a lady. Eliaria presses him. Then Elise steps forward with a very direct question. Does Ryoma know the conditions for slime evolution? Ryoma says he knows, more or less. The adults exchange glances. Reinhardt confirms he has never heard of this. Elise nods slowly and warns Ryoma to be careful about who he shares such things with. It is an incredible discovery, she says. Ryoma admits he only studied slimes because it interested him, not for results or fame. He simply enjoyed the process. He then explains the core finding. Slimes evolve based on what they eat. Bones produce acid slimes. Green caterpillars produce sticky slimes. Poisonous plants produce poison slimes. Eliaria asks brightly what is needed for a cleaner slime. Ryoma freezes. Explaining slime evolution means explaining that, and saying that to a girl is another matter entirely. Lu Eunice, the cat-eared maid, smiles and tells him not to hesitate. She knows the basics of taming magic. Master Ryoma, please just tell them. Eliaria looks at Ryoma with complete sincerity and says she does not want her first familiar chosen badly. She will treasure it forever. Ryoma stares at her. He is convinced without any proof, which baffles him. He grabs his own head in distress while Eliaria and the maids call his name. Reinhardt calmly suggests everyone settle down. Reinhardt asks Ryoma privately whether this is something that absolutely cannot be shared. Ryoma admits it is just difficult to say. The men whisper among themselves. Then Reinhardt announces he now understands the method and will explain it to the ladies himself. Reinhardt delivers the answer without softening it at all. Take a bath, then lure the slimes into the dirty water. Ryoma stares. He did not even sugarcoat it. Elise, Eliaria, and both maids stand in stunned silence as Reinhardt gestures toward an imagined bathtub with complete confidence. A distant sound like a slap echoes across the mountains. Elise reassures Ryoma that none of this is his fault. Eliaria, blushing, declares she still wants a cleaner slime after all. Ryoma suggests letting one of the men do it instead. Eliaria refuses outright. Eliaria explains that she is aiming to become a tamer and cannot depend on others for this first step. Ryoma thinks of his past life, doing everything alone until it wore him down. He looks at her and says the decision is hers to make. Eliaria goes very pink and quietly asks for some water. She sniffs herself, then squares her shoulders. Reinhardt starts applauding and calls her his daughter. Ryoma points her toward the bathtub. She thanks him and goes. Eliaria bathes with Lulunise's help. When she emerges, she waves goodbye carrying a bucket. Ryoma waits with the other maids. Later, they all return from the bathing area together. Eliaria comes back, cradling a large translucent slime against her chest, eyes shining. She declares it her first familiar and promises to treasure it forever. Ryoma watches her with a soft smile and offers his congratulations. A bonus moment. Ryoma is up a tree gathering fruit when he spots a slime clinging to a branch above him and a small rabbit-like creature perched even higher. He wonders, with genuine concern, whether slimes are afraid of heights too. Dinner is served. Thinly sliced boar meat with grated zuzuya, a small mound of rice, and garnish. Eliaria, Elise, and Reinhardt look at their plates in surprise. Ryoma explains he was trying to recreate ginger pork from his previous life and hopes it suits them. The table erupts in praise. Someone shouts that level 10 housekeeping is something else. Ryoma insists the real dish with proper pork would be much better. A maid asks about the seasoning and learns he collected rock salt from the forest. Everyone stares. Ryoma explains he used alchemy to remove the poisonous minerals before using it. The word alchemy lands like a thunderclap. Reinhardt and Elise stare. Reinbach notes that actual alchemists are extremely rare. Ryoma wonders if he should have kept that to himself. Elise explains the history. The alchemy king made a fortune turning things to gold, and everyone tried to copy him and failed. Alchemy is mostly used for scams now. Ryoma thinks it sounds like the alchemy from Earth. He wonders quietly whether mentioning it was wise. Reinbach says it would probably be best not to advertise it, though using it to refine salt is genuinely impressive. After dinner, the maids clear the table. Elise asks Ryoma what he plans to do from here. He admits he is undecided about whether to stay in the forest or move on. He looks around at his slimes and adds that he is more or less done with the research. Ryoma's real motivation surfaces. He wants to cook proper dishes for these people, and that requires proper seasonings and groceries he cannot find in the forest. Having thoughts like that, he reflects, is probably a sign it is time to see more of the world. Reinbach steps forward and asks Ryoma a direct question. Reinbach says it is a waste for an excellent tamer to remain in the forest. Reinhardt adds that they are heading to the city of Gimel and invites Ryoma to travel with them at least that far. Ryoma looks up, surprised. The whole group at the table turns toward Ryoma and calls out together to travel with them. Ryoma's eyes fill with tears. Eliaria grabs his hands and tells him it is a promise, she will not forget. Ryoma blushes and mutters that it really is no big deal. Ryoma accepts. He admits he does not know much about this world, and going alone would be harder. Reinhardt immediately orders everyone to help with preparations. Ryoma smiles and thanks them all, genuinely happy. Ryoma asks if he can bring his slimes. Of course, Reinbach says, tamers always bring their familiars. Reinhardt asks about transporting such a large number. Ryoma holds up his fingers and says there are only 17. The family looks confused, then Elise asks what he plans to do about the rest. Ryoma demonstrates. A big slime shrinks back to normal size with a soft pop. The family gasps. Ryoma lists his 4 large slimes. Big acid slime holding 211, big poison slime holding 323, big sticky slime holding 364, and a huge scavenger slime holding 730. With that, they are down to 4. The remaining 11 are cleaner slimes, plus 2 newly evolved healing slimes. Reinhardt asks about the healing slimes, which were not there before. Ryoma explains, after the last visit, he encountered goblins. One slime was badly injured in the fight. He used recovery magic on it, and it evolved. The next day, Elise hugs Ryoma so tightly he cannot breathe, overwhelmed with pride at his discovery. Sebas firmly suggests she release him. Later, walking through the forest, Reinhardt explains that big slimes are difficult opponents, and many tamers tried and failed to contract them. No one had ever managed it before Ryoma. The family is equally impressed that Ryoma can use an item box, which Reinhardt calls a superior attribute for someone his age. Elise offers to teach him anything he wants to learn. Eliaria says studying together with Ryoma could be fun. Ryoma is grateful that the people he met are genuinely good people. They offer to help pack. He opens a side room, and the group is confronted with a floor-to-ceiling pile of swords, shields, armor, and bags. Ryoma explains it is what he took from bandits he defeated. The bags, he admits, he has never actually opened. The staff throws themselves into packing with enthusiasm. Eliaria finds gold coins inside one of the bags. By evening, the room is completely empty. They will leave tomorrow. Ryoma has prepared rooms for everyone. Reinhardt thanks him. Elise asks what Ryoma is doing, and he says he has one last check to make before sleeping. He thinks of the innermost room and heads toward it. This is the place where he trained every day and talked to the gods. 3 statues stand at the far end of the room: Lulusha, serene and beautiful; Gain, long-bearded and solemn; and Kufo, young and bright-eyed. Ryoma kneels before the statues and tells them he has decided to travel to the city of Gamul with the Jamil family. He says this will let him keep his promise to visit a church. If he never comes back to this place, he will make new statues of them wherever he ends up. He seals the training room door with earth magic. Eliaria appears in the hallway holding a pillow, surprised to find him still up. She asks about the room. He tells her it is a training room. She asks if he means physical training. He confirms it. She says she sees. A vision of Gain, Tekun, Kufo, and Lulusia smiling fills his thoughts. Eliaria explains that through the tamer contract, she can feel her slime's emotions, and it was uneasy tonight. She wanted to comfort it. She asks if Ryoma felt the same way with his first contract. He thinks back to the magic circle and the thread of light connecting him to his first slime. The first emotion he received from that slime was fear. Its shivering reminded him of someone, a man named Tabuchi, a new hire at his old company. The slime moved slowly, failed to catch prey, and got swept away every time it tried to drink from the river. Ryoma stood on the bank and shouted at it to try harder, refusing to help if it got swept away again. When it finally made it out, he praised it fiercely and held it close. Tabuchi, the human, was a geek who struggled to fit in at work. He got better gradually. The slime evolved into a sticky slime. Eliaria calls his name and he snaps back to the present, apologizing for spacing out. She says it is time to sleep. He says goodnight. Alone, he holds a small dark slime with 3 nuclei and thinks quietly that neither of the Tabuchis are with him anymore. The next morning, Ryoma finishes adjusting his gear and hopes Tabuchi found a better, more enjoyable place. Elise sees him and lights up. The journey to a new city is about to begin. Elise tells Ryoma his new traveling clothes suit him well. He uses earth magic to seal the cave entrance, watching rocks fill the opening. Starting now, he narrates to himself he will travel to a new place. The whole group sets out together. Ryoma and Eliaria in front, Elise, Reinbach, and Reinhardt behind them, and Hughes, Dorch, Lulunis, and the rest of the staff following. Someone shouts for them to go, and they move forward into the morning light. They reach a road and are met by a column of the Jamil family's personal soldiers, who have been investigating the forest due to rising monster numbers. Ryoma asks who they are. Reinbach explains they are here to escort the group and have been conducting an investigation. Ryoma is surprised. An investigation? Reinbach explains that monster numbers have increased in recent years, yet casualties in this area have remained low. He credits Ryoma's presence for keeping the local population in check. Sebas then steps forward and summons the carriage using spatial magic, a glowing circle appearing from nowhere. 2 horses step out of the portal, followed by a large ornate carriage loaded with luggage. Ryoma stares. Even the carriage fits in there? Eliaria explains that the luggage is in there too. Ryoma thinks there is still more. The carriage rolls toward the city of Kirpin, their first checkpoint. Inside, Eliaria and Elise chat while Ryoma rests his chin on his hand and watches the road. Eliaria spots the city walls and shouts in excitement. Reinbach confirms they have arrived at their first stop. Ryoma realizes he has never been to a city in this world. Then it hits him. He has no identification card. He panics silently. Elise notices and reassures him. Those without an ID card simply undergo an interview and receive a temporary one. Ryoma exhales. Thank goodness. Ryoma apologizes to the group for his broken speech, explaining that after 3 years without conversation, he struggled badly when Reinhardt first found him. He practiced by talking to slimes. Elise suddenly pulls him into a crushing hug. Ryoma makes a strangled noise. Elise tells him he is no longer alone and to take his time recovering. Ryoma is buried in her cloak, overwhelmed. She squeezes harder. He manages to say he is fine now because he is with them. The carriage pulls up to the city gate. The city of Celeban is busy and vast. Ryoma stares at the crowd and tells himself not to stand out. At the gate, an official asks him to place his hand on a crystal ball. It glows blue. The official's face goes white. The official announces that the crystal has a record of Ryoma defeating the wanted bandit Merzin of the Red Spear. The Jamil family stares. Ryoma has no idea who that is. Hughes pulls out a large red spear he found in Ryoma's storage room, and the official confirms it is a fire-imbued magic weapon. The reward is 700 gold coins. Hughes laughs and ruffles Ryoma's hair, saying he has become quite rich. Bystanders lean in with envy and questions. Ryoma explains he had his poison slimes sneak into the bandits' beer barrels. Hughes and Reinhardt are delighted. Ryoma is already standing out far more than intended. As the group passes through the gate, townspeople whisper that the kid defeated the Merzan gang. Caliban is the biggest merchant town in the Jamil domain. Ryoma looks around and thinks it looks exactly like his mental image of a fantasy town. He is a little disappointed there are no beastkin or elves in sight. He suspects it is because he is used to the overwhelming scale of Tokyo. Eliaria has never seen such a big town and is barely containing herself. She points at dress shops, food stalls, and a window full of stuffed animals. Then she bolts. Ryoma calls after her and runs to keep up. Ryoma catches up to Eliaria and tells her it is dangerous to wander. Reinhardt shouts a warning, "Assassin snake." He orders guards to keep watch on the children. A white serpentine creature slithers through the crowd. Eliaria is distracted by a fruit stall. Ryoma watches the crowd and notices a hooded figure moving toward her at an odd angle. He reaches for her arm. The hooded figure veers off with a sharp sound of annoyance. A pickpocket. Ryoma pulls Eliaria clear and asks if she is all right. She looks up at him, flushed, and finds he is holding both her hands. They both go red and look away. A large, rough-looking man steps in front of them. He notices Eliaria's expensive clothes, and his expression turns calculating. He says he thinks he is owed a better apology. Ryoma moves before the man finishes his sentence. He grabs the man's arm, twists, and throws him over his shoulder in one clean motion. The man crashes to the ground. The man lies on the cobblestones, dazed. Bystanders stare. Ryoma stands over him calmly and asks Eliaria if she is hurt. The man scrambles to his feet, shouts an apology, and runs. Ryoma offers Eliaria his arm and asks if they should go. She agrees. They walk on and eventually arrive at the inn. Eliaria sinks onto a sofa and peels off her shoes, wincing. It was her first long carriage trip and her feet are tired. She asks Ryoma if he is winded too. He says not at all. She stares at him. Ryoma mentions he has pulled a carriage before, as a part-time job. A flashback shows a man hauling a rickshaw with 2 passengers inside. Eliaria and both maids turn to him with identical expressions of horror. Everyone imagines a muscular man dragging a carriage and goes quiet. Reinbach informs Ryoma that his room will be with the servants, and Ryoma says that is perfectly fine. Reinbach then asks, gently, whether something happened on the road. The Jamil family and their associates settle in for tea. Reinbach asks what they all make of Ryoma. A young man with light hair admits many things about the boy give him pause. The carriage comment is just one. He does not think Ryoma is a bad kid, but something is off. The light-haired youth notes that Ryoma dispatched a bandit with a poisoned slime, but is clearly capable of much more on his own. Reinhardt confirms it. His familiar observed Ryoma in action today, and the skill he showed against a common ruffian was remarkable. He adds that Eliaria should be more cautious. Reinbach agrees there is no such thing as too strong when it comes to survival. All they can do is watch over the boy. Elise recalls how Ryoma barely reacted to the size of the town, as if comparing it to somewhere else entirely. A tiny thought bubble shows Ryoma thinking of Tokyo. Reinhardt looks down with quiet sorrow. He does not know what kind of harsh life Ryoma has led, but seeing a youngster gaze at the world with eyes of stone is wretched. Across town, Ryoma enters the servants' room to a warm welcome. A woman with short hair points him to his bed. The servants compliment Ryoma's polite speech and ask where he learned to make potions. He credits his grandmother, who believed that being studious and courteous kept trouble away. The backstory the gods prepared flows out naturally. His grandfather, he adds, could only craft weapons and fight, but everything he made was first-rate. The men encourage Ryoma to buy what he needs while they are in town, offering to take him to dinner. Ryoma asks where he can find a church. The group looks surprised. Unfortunately, they tell him, such places close early and would already be shut for the night. Ryoma droops visibly. The light-haired man pats his head and asks how he expressed his faith before. Ryoma admits he made statues out of earth magic and prayed to them in the forest. The woman suggests he buy stones at the inn and make portable statues. Ryoma considers it. That might actually work. Ryoma returns with stones and the whole room gathers around him. He processes the stone with earth magic, gives it form, carves it, and adds finishing touches. The room holds its breath. 3 statues emerge, Lulusia, Gain, and Kufo, each rendered with astonishing detail. The servants crowd in, stunned. Someone says the statues look so lifelike it is as if Ryoma had actually met the gods and based them on his memories. Ryoma swallows hard. Sebas suggests Ryoma could make a living as a sculptor. The spiky-haired man holds up Lulusia's statue and marvels at every strand of her hair. Ryoma says it is just a magic crafting skill, then privately credits years of obsessing over anime figures. A shot of the inn building marks the passage of the night. The next morning, the Jamil family and Ryoma set out for Gamul. The carriage rolls through rain-soaked countryside, horses pulling steadily through the downpour. Inside the carriage, Eliaria watches the rain. Elise notes that a downpour like this is rare this time of year and calls it bad luck. The word bad luck catches Ryoma off guard. He always felt cursed by it in his past life. Then the carriage jolts to a stop. A landslide has blocked the road. The road ahead is completely buried. A detour exists, but runs through bandit territory. A guard reports that someone with a weather forecasting skill predicts the rain will stop in a few hours. The best plan is to make camp away from the slide and clear the debris once the rain stops. Reinhardt considers it. Reinhardt gives the order to set up camp. Workers in leather capes file out into the rain, soaked almost immediately. Ryoma watches them from the carriage window, fidgeting. He asks if he can use barrier magic. Elise and Reinhardt look up, curious. He tries to explain in his still halting sentences. The workers outside are wet. A rain-repelling barrier would protect them. He panics internally, realizing he has to explain properly. He reaches into his item box. Ryoma steps outside in his homemade raincoat and casts rain shield. Glowing magic circles bloom across the sky above the camp and the rain parts around them. Workers look up in disbelief. Ryoma moves through the camp, casting section after section, covering each group in turn. Eliaria and Reinhardt cheer from the carriage. When the barriers are all in place, Ryoma steps back inside. He waves the rain off his coat with water magic, drying it completely. The group hands him warm tea. He settles in and starts to say something. Elise asks about the raincoat, having never seen anything like it. Ryoma explains he coated fabric with sticky slime solution, which becomes waterproof once fully dry. Elise is confused. Sticky slime solution is an adhesive. A maid appears at the carriage door, damp from her tasks outside. Ryoma pulls a large piece of treated fabric from his item box and hands it to the maid. She looks at it and notes it is a curtain. He explains he repurposed it as rain gear. The material also repels dirt and washes clean with water. The maid accepts it gratefully. Reinhardt and Elise are already talking about how to put this to practical use. Reinhardt declares it a rainwear revolution. Ryoma reflects that his modern knowledge is essentially a cheat ability, and that being helpful to these people makes him genuinely happy. Ryoma sits with the Jamil family, thinking about the gods giving him his past life knowledge alongside his magic. The group debates how to commercialize his invention. Ryoma watches them and thinks quietly that being helpful to these people makes him happy. The rain stops. Reinhardt tells everyone to rest in the tent today while the workers finish clearing the road. Ryoma says he will go help. Reinhardt looks surprised. Elise worries about Ryoma's fatigue after all the barrier casting. Ryoma insists he is fine and wants to help, calling it training. Reinbach relents but tells him not to run out of magic, as that is genuinely painful. Elise adds that he should rest the moment he gets tired. Ryoma thanks them and heads toward the landslide. Ryoma arrives at the site with his slimes. Workers are hauling debris in small groups. A light-haired foreman recognizes him and asks if he is all right. Ryoma says he came to help and asks where he is needed. The foreman explains that the landslide is large and even the earth magic users are struggling. He asks Ryoma to lend a hand with the boulder teams. Ryoma runs over. Workers glance at the small boy with curiosity. Ryoma studies how they are working. The workers use break rock to shatter boulders and rock to harden the loose dirt for easier carrying. Ryoma watches, then looks at his slimes. He tells them to do it like usual. When he was digging his cave, he combined those two spells into something faster. Ryoma spreads his arms and casts Create Block. The ground rumbles. Boulders and dirt transform simultaneously into uniform stone cubes across a wide area. He shouts for the slimes to form a line and pass them along. A long chain of slimes bounces the cubes away, one to the next, clearing the site at remarkable speed. Workers stop and stare. A foreman approaches Ryoma and asks if that spell just turned everything into stone at once, because he has never seen anything like it. Ryoma explains Create Block. First, break rock reduces everything to dirt, then rock hardens it into stone, and imagining both steps as a single process produces the compound spell. The foreman tries it himself, manages it on the first attempt, and cheers. Ryoma smiles and says he caught on quickly. The foreman asks permission to teach the others. Ryoma agrees. He calls to his slimes and they keep moving. By the time Hughes calls a halt for the day, most of the rubble is gone. Workers wave goodbye and thank Ryoma and the slimes. Ryoma says he is glad he could help. He walks back toward camp as night falls. Inside the tent, Elise lunges forward and seizes him in both arms, eyes full of tears. Elise squeezes him and demands to know how he could work so hard in a place like that. Eunice shouts that she is holding him too tightly. Ryoma turns blue. Eunice and another servant pry Elise away. Ryoma gasps for air. Elise apologizes and bows deeply. Reinhardt and Reinbach watch from the background. Dinner is served. Over dinner, Eliaria asks Ryoma how much magical energy he has. He admits he does not know his current level, but recalls a number from the God's guidebook at the very start, 10,238. He did not understand it at the time. Reinhardt explains that children normally have their status measured at age 10, though nobles do it earlier. Eliaria had hers done at 5. Elise notes that Ryoma uses a wide variety of spells. Reinbach asks if he specializes in one element in particular. Ryoma says he can use all elements, but focused mainly on magic useful for daily life, like fire for cooking and water for cleaning. Reinbach warns him that being able to use everything makes it easy to become a jack of all trades and master of none. Ryoma says the gods told him the same thing. Reinhardt calls it a night. The next morning the carriage rolls on through mountain scenery. Ryoma rests his chin on his hand and watches the road. Elise points out the window. The mining town of Gurm sits in a valley ahead. Elise explains that Gurm has a rare branch of the Tamers Guild because miners need strong familiars to carry heavy loads. In the streets, a stone golem hauls a cart. A horned beast pulls another. The town is built around the work. Reinhardt explains the mine's output has been declining for years and has been nearly zero for 3. The latest inspection suggests it may be abandoned, yet the town itself will survive on other mines for another decade. Ryoma notes the atmosphere is much calmer than a coal mining town. They settle into an inn. Elise suggests heading to the Tamers Guild next. Ryoma hesitates and says there is something he wants to do first. A large church building comes into view. A nun welcomes them at the entrance. Reinbach explains that Ryoma can get a status board issued at the church, which he will need to register at the guild. If his taming skill appears on the board, registration is straightforward. If not, he must perform a contract in front of a guild official. Ryoma looks around the interior of the church in quiet awe. The nun guides Ryoma to the altar while the rest of the family waits in the lobby. Eliaria waves goodbye. The altar holds a glowing crystal ball on a pedestal, and sparkles fill the air around it. The nun explains the process. Slide the plank into the pedestal and touch the crystal ball. Letters will project onto the plank. A bright light will appear, but it will not hurt him. Ryoma nods and reaches out. A blinding explosion of white light erupts the moment his fingers touch the crystal. Ryoma shields his eyes. When he opens them, he is somewhere else entirely. Lulusha stands to his left, Gain in the center, and Kufo to his right. They are surrounded by stars and warm light. Ryoma stares up at them. Lulusha calls out to him. The 3 gods smile. Ryoma's first panic thought is that he has died again. Kufo and Lulusha tell him no, he has not died. Ryoma stares at them, then shouts anyway. Gain explains they simply brought his spirit here temporarily. He will wake up and time will continue as normal. Lulusha reminds Ryoma of the oracle skill she mentioned when they first parted. He earned it through 3 years of daily prayer, simple living, and disciplined training. Getting baptized was the final trigger. Ryoma absorbs this quietly. The gods thank him for keeping his promise and visiting a church. He smiles and says it is great to see them again. He thinks of the gods' kindness as the reward for everything he has done up to now. Kufo and Gain laugh, admitting they expected him to leave the forest within a year, not 3. Lulusha raves about his home and especially his toilet, calling it the cleanest and most odor-free in the entire world. Gain adds that the cleaner and scavenger slimes were new breeds Ryoma himself produced. Ryoma shouts in disbelief. Gain explains that when he created the original slimes, he only gave them the ability to adapt and reproduce. They were too weak to ever evolve in nature. Ryoma opened up possibilities even their creator had neglected. Ryoma is overwhelmed. The gods are not omnipotent, Gain says simply. They have their own strengths and weaknesses. Lulusha mentions what a coincidence it is that Ryoma got involved with the Jamil family. Their ancestor was an otherworlder sent by the gods from Earth, a girl who wanted to become an animal trainer. Ryoma shouts in shock. Lulusha adds that there is something else about the Duke's family he should know. The ancestor arrived in a world at war and combined existing techniques with divine power to perfect taming magic. She earned a title from the king, fell in love with a fellow noble, and founded the Jamil lineage, a long line of honorable tamers. Lulusha explains that Eliaria has inherited the otherworlder blood most thickly and is a throwback to that ancestor. Ryoma is glad. She tries so hard. Then Gain adds that it is actually traits from her mother's side that she most channels. Ryoma stares. Both of her parents are descended from earthlings? Lulusia describes the second ancestor, a young man who was a geek and bad at physical activity, but whose magical energy and rapid-fire spell work were unmatched. She watched him nervously right up until the day he died, worried about what he might do with that power. Ryoma realizes this is the ancestor Eliaria takes after. Ryoma asks how many otherworlders there have been. Gain explains that one soul from Earth replenishes the magical energy for 200 years, so multiple travelers in the same era is unusual. The exception was a period of war when magical consumption spiked, and they had to bring someone over in a hurry. Kufo tells Ryoma to look for books about the other travelers if he wants to know more. Gain notes that many otherworlders appear in legends as heroes, elites, or demon kings. The Alchemy King was one of them. Lulusha says that particular one made her blood boil. Ryoma smiles awkwardly, suspecting some of them used their abilities very selfishly. Kufo and Lulusha praise Ryoma for being well-mannered and for making his own decisions. Ryoma asks what they mean. Kufo says he just does not want Ryoma holding back. Gain reminds him that in his old life he was weighed down by the whims of others. Here, he can live as he likes. He gestures to an image of Ryoma walking with the whole Jamil family and their staff. As long as Ryoma is enjoying himself, Gain says, perhaps that is enough to make life worth living. Ryoma looks thoughtful. Then Gain mentions casually that other gods have been spying on him lately. Ryoma shouts. Lulusha lists them: the god of war, the god of magic, and the god of artisans and craftsmanship. That last one, Gain explains, is also the god of wine, Tekun. A large laughing man with a beard appears behind Gain. Tekun appreciated Ryoma's drinking in his past life, and was also entertained by his drunken fist martial arts practice. Ryoma goes red with embarrassment. Light begins to gather around Ryoma. Their time is up. Kufo and Lulusha say they hate to see him go, but they can meet like this every time he visits a church. Ryoma fades away with a smile, saying he hopes so. A flash of light and Ryoma is back in the church. The Jamil family welcomes him. The nun confirms the baptism was successful. Elise asks if Estas is properly cloaked. Ryoma holds up his card. Everything but his name, age, and race is hidden. Elise tells Ryoma his status is personal information and he must keep it private. Reinhardt walks with him through the hall and explains that his abilities are so great it will be difficult to hide them. Rather than trying and failing, he suggests getting Ryoma registered at the guild and letting him rise to his proper rank through legitimate work. Reinhardt warns that those blessed by gods are often targeted. Ryoma thinks about how freely he has been using his abilities and wonders if they really stand out that much. He promises to be careful. Eliaria fidgets nearby, watching him. Eliaria works up her courage and asks Ryoma how much magical energy he has. She saw how much he used during the landslide, and her father said it would have made a normal person faint. She has been curious, but did not want to be rude. Ryoma checks his status and reads out the number, 190,880. The entire group goes silent. Reinbach says that is quite high. Eliaria leans in and tells him that is not the point. He blinks. She explains that what impresses her is that he actually controls all of it. Reinbach asks if Ryoma knows about the adverse effect of surplus magical energy. Ryoma does not. Reinbach produces a diagram of faucets. A normal person controls their flow precisely, but someone with too much magic is like a faucet running wild. The pressure makes it difficult to control and difficult to learn new skills. People with vast magical energy require far more training than average. Ryoma thinks back to when he first started using magic in the forest. Even casting the same spell with the same energy produced completely different results from one year to the next. He assumed it was just improvement from practice. Eliaria stares at him, appalled. He smiles and says he simply did not have anyone to compare with. Eliaria looks down and admits she can barely manage to use her magic at all. She has never met anyone with nearly the same magical energy as her, so she has been curious how Ryoma learned to wield it. She was reluctant to ask in case it seemed rude. Her own total, she reveals, is around 200,000. Ryoma offers to show Eliaria the magic section of his status board. Her face lights up. He holds up the board and calls display. The table shows all 18 magic types and their current levels, from taming and barrier down to dark and space. The group praises Ryoma's high levels across difficult elements like earth and space. He explains he used them constantly while living in the forest, and hunted mainly with bow and arrow to avoid charring the meat. Reinbach suggests he practice attack magic, since some monsters can only be harmed by it. Ryoma agrees. Eliaria looks thoughtful. Eliaria asks if using magic in daily life, the way Ryoma has, will help her cast properly. Ryoma suggests she just play with basic spells in her free time, and she will eventually get the hang of it. Eliaria blinks. Play? With magic? The Jamil family looks at each other in surprise. Ryoma offers to show her how one of these days. Eliaria grabs both his hands and declares it a promise she will not forget. Ryoma turns pink and says it really is no big deal. Behind them, Elise, Reinhardt, and Reinbach watch with warm smiles. Seeing her so delighted makes Ryoma happy, he thinks quietly. Reinbach asks if they shall head to the Tamers Guild. Eliaria shouts yes. They set out together. The Tamers Guild is a grand stone building in a lively district. A giant cat sits on a passing carriage. A horned creature the size of a small house is being led down the street. Ryoma and Eliaria press their faces to the carriage window. A staff member guides the group inside, where an older man with glasses and a beard greets Reinbach warmly. Taylor Smith, guildmaster of the Gurm branch of the Tamers Guild, welcomes the family and mistakes Ryoma for a second grandchild. Reinbach introduces him as someone fate brought their way. Then Reinbach asks Taylor to help Ryoma move up through the ranks as quickly as possible, which makes Ryoma stare. Taylor agrees to see what he can do and hands both Ryoma and Eliaria registration forms. He congratulates Eliaria on her first contract, then turns to Ryoma and asks what his current familiar is. Ryoma answers plainly, a slime. Taylor's expression freezes. Taylor explains carefully that slimes are considered weak and there is not much tamer work in this mining town that a slime could do. Without taking jobs, Ryoma cannot raise his rank. Taylor looks genuinely regretful. Ryoma asks if his slime research results would be enough to recommend him. Ryoma describes discovering 2 new slime varieties and finding a way to contract a big slime. Taylor stares. He says he personally considers that a real achievement, but the guild's higher-ups judge tamers solely by rank and monster strength. Reinhardt asks if that is a problem. Taylor says it has gotten much worse lately. Even if Taylor granted Ryoma a high rank, headquarters in the royal capital would review it and likely demote him. Ryoma thinks of the god's endorsement and how little that seems to matter here. He says he understands. There are some things society will not accept regardless. Taylor completes the registration for both of them and welcomes them as the newest members of the Tamers Guild. Ryoma and Eliaria hold up their glowing status boards for the reading. The group files back out into the city street. The group discusses how difficult it will be to raise Ryoma's rank through the Tamers Guild. Reinhardt turns to Ryoma with a new idea. The Adventurers Guild. It values survival skills and combat ability, and Ryoma has both. He killed a black bear alone in the forest. Ryoma looks at the large stone building ahead and asks if they are sure about this. The Adventurers Guild. Ryoma stands in the courtyard holding a bow, looking up at the building. The Jamil family watches from the side. Eliaria waves encouragingly. Ryoma tells himself that with everyone's expectations riding on him, he needs to go all out. The examiner shouts for him to begin. Ryoma draws, aims, and releases in a single fluid motion. He reaches for a second arrow before the first has landed. 4 arrows hit 4 targets dead center, one after another. The sound echoes across the courtyard. Ryoma exhales and lowers his bow. The Jamil family stands with their mouths open. Eliaria asks if bows are supposed to be fired that quickly. Reinbach tells her gently that no, they are not. The examiner confirms all 4 shots are dead center and calls it well done. The light-haired youth says quietly that they may have been underestimating Ryoma's true strength. Ryoma thinks back on his father's strict archery school, which taught combat shooting rather than ceremonial form. 3 years of hunting in the forest sharpened it further. The examiner points to a device in the wall and announces the next phase, moving targets. The examiner explains that a famous adventurer named Kengo, who came from another world, invented this training device based on something called a shotgun. His magic weapon eventually stopped working, but the device he built from the concept made him wealthy for life. Ryoma processes the word otherworlder quietly. 50 targets, 50 arrows. The examiner tells him to shoot them down. The examiner gives the signal. A target disc flies out of the slot. Ryoma fires before it clears the wall. Target after target falls. Ryoma draws, fires, reaches for the next arrow in a single unbroken rhythm. The examiner watches without speaking, his expression shifting from assessment to something closer to awe. 4 discs launch simultaneously. The group gasps. Ryoma grabs 4 arrows at once, draws them together, and releases. 4 arrows, 4 discs, 4 impacts. Ryoma stands in the center of the courtyard, surrounded by fallen targets, breathing steadily. The examiner stares at him with an intensity that makes Ryoma wonder if he did something wrong. The examiner throws a blunt-tipped knife without warning. Ryoma's eyes go wide. He dodges and launches a counter in the same motion. The examiner deflects the projectile, then has to leap back as a massive stone spike erupts from the ground at his feet. Ryoma stands behind it, staff in hand, having cast Earth Needle on pure reflex. The examiner raises both hands and calls stop. He tells Ryoma the test is over and he passed. The Jamil family exhales. Eliaria covers her face. Ryoma lands and looks up at the examiner, surprised. Ryoma apologizes for the aggressive counterattack. The examiner laughs it off, explaining he throws the blunt knife at archers to keep them alert for real battle. Most people barely dodge. No one his age has ever counterattacked. He shows Ryoma the rounded, bladeless tip. The examiner introduces himself as Wogan, guildmaster of the Gurm branch of the Adventurers Guild. Ryoma stares. Wogan explains quietly that there was no way he was going to leave someone introduced by the Duke's family in the hands of an amateur. Sebas approaches to hear the results. Wogan announces Ryoma passed with flying colors and will face no limits on jobs of his own rank. Eliaria shouts in congratulation. Elise hugs Ryoma. Later inside the guild, Wogan hands Ryoma a rank G card and explains the 8-grade system from G up to S. Wogan explains why he is starting Ryoma at G despite his ability. Taking jobs above his rank at his age would make him stand out dangerously and attract enemies. If he fails, he bears the full cost and the risk to his life. Building a track record first is the only sensible path. Wogan tells Ryoma he will move up quickly if he takes this seriously. Ryoma bows in thanks. Wogan tells him to drop the formal speech, then reaches into his desk and hands Ryoma something. It is a letter of introduction to a blacksmith Wogan trusts. He notes that Ryoma uses both a bow and a spear, and the shop has good armor too. Ryoma's eyes light up, a fantasy world weapons shop. He thanks Wogan and heads back to the family. Elise tells him to rest. He says yes. Ryoma catches Sebas in the hallway and asks if the inn sells stones for sculpting. He explains that during the baptism he received a blessing from a new god, Tekun, and wants to make a statue for him. Sebas asks which god. Ryoma says the god of liquor, Tekun. Reinbach marvels that a human received Tekun's blessing, since he is usually worshipped by dwarves. Ryoma says his grandfather who raised him was a dwarf. Reinbach accepts this and explains that Tekun is also the god of arts and crafts. Though his blessing as the god of liquor means Ryoma will never get drunk or suffer a hangover, Reinbach admits he is a little envious. Ryoma thinks about finally being able to drink good liquor in this world, though he will have to wait until he is old enough. Reinbach then produces a glass box of stones, saying he brought the blocks Ryoma made from the landslide, thinking Ryoma could sell them for living expenses. Ryoma is surprised. Reinbach explains that money is essential in a city, and he suspected Ryoma would not want to rely entirely on the family's generosity. The stones are uniform and high quality. They should fetch a reasonable price. Ryoma thanks him sincerely. Reinbach adds that Tekun dislikes excessive luxury, so a simply made but wholeheartedly crafted statue would suit him best. He also suggests a wine offering. A large laughing figure, Tekun himself, seems to fill Ryoma's imagination for a moment. The following day, Ryoma loads his slimes into a woven basket and tells them they are going out. He is heading for his first job. Eliaria and Reinhardt wave him off. They have a meeting with the prefectural governor today. The Adventurers Guild bulletin board is covered in requests. Ryoma scans the G-rank listings, taking out trash, cleaning public toilets. He picks cleaning a house. He holds up the paper and decides, this one. The eastern part of the city, next to the dumpster. Ryoma finds the house and knocks, announcing he has come for the cleaning request. The house erupts with tapping sounds, then the door flies open. A young woman with cat ears and a tail stands in the doorway, her expression a mix of desperation and relief. Ryoma stares. Cat ears, from the beast tribe. This is his first time seeing one in person. She bursts into tears the moment he confirms he came to clean. She wails that she had already given up and throws herself at him in a hug. Ryoma asks her, very politely, to please calm down. The woman introduces herself as Mianya. The moment the door opened, Ryoma was hit by a wall of smell. He fixes a business smile on his face and asks her to confirm the details of the request. Mianya nods cheerfully. A diagram explains the situation. A shared wall between the dumpster and the basement collapsed, and trash poured in. Ryoma asks if there is anything of value in the basement. Mianya says she never used it, and even if there were something in there, it would be unusable now. Ryoma tells her he should be able to finish quickly. Mianya starts crying again, saying he is the first adventurer who looks eager to work. Everyone else left halfway through. She asks how he plans to do it. He says he has cleaning magic and holds up the basket of slimes. Ryoma opens the basement doors. Rotting trash fills the space from floor to ceiling, swarming with flies. He looks at it with a small, determined smile and a bead of sweat on his cheek. Mianya calls from the stairs, asking him to wait. Ryoma slams the doors shut. He turns back with a strained smile and tells Mianya there is nothing to worry about. She sounds unconvinced. He thinks, it is time for the slimes. Chapter 9. My First Job. Ryoma pumps his fist and tells everyone it is time to start cleaning. He extends his hands and casts reduction cancel. 730 scavenger slimes pour out of the huge scavenger slime in a rushing wave and flood through the basement doors. The slimes swarm over the trash, consuming everything. Flies buzz in thick clouds. Ryoma covers his nose and calls for the scavenger slimes to eat it all. Then he remembers the flies and casts stench release to drive them back. The slimes begin catching the insects too. The slimes work steadily, eating and absorbing. Ryoma watches and gives them time. An hour passes. He sits and waits, wondering what is going to happen to their bodies after consuming this much. 20 minutes in, the pile has shrunk enough to reveal the hole in the wall. Ryoma coughs from the dust. He asks the slimes if they can eat the dumpster side too. They jump with enthusiasm. 1 hour later, almost everything is gone. The basement and dumpster are empty. Ryoma calls for the scavengers and cleaners and orders them to spray deodorizer. Slimes leap into the air and release a fine mist across every surface. The slimes coat the walls in deodorizing liquid. Ryoma decides to go further. He compresses water with his magic and prepares the spell he developed while digging his cave. Mist wash fills the room in a roaring spray. Ryoma has the scavenger slimes drink the filthy runoff until the floor is clean. Then something surprises him from behind, and he shouts in alarm. A cleaner slime perches on his head and washes the grime off him. He holds it up and thanks it. Mianya appears in the doorway and stops, staring at the spotless room. Mianya looks at the ceiling, the walls, and the repaired hole in the wall which Ryoma sealed using Create Block and the sticky slimes. She cheers, then grabs both his hands. Ryoma asks if fixing the hole was unnecessary. She says absolutely not. Mianya thanks him with tears in her eyes and promises to increase his reward. Ryoma is flustered. Later, he stands at the guild reception counter and reports the job complete, handing over his documents with a smile. The receptionist stares at the paperwork. She confirms this is Mianya's request, the one about trash. He finished it in 3 hours? She praises him warmly and places a large tied pouch on the counter, 30 silver coins. Ryoma notes that 30 silver coins is enough to live on for 10 months. The receptionist explains that Mianya kept raising the reward because no one would take the job, and added a bonus on top. Ryoma thinks of Mianya winking at him and feels a little guilty about the medicine. The sense of achievement from his first completed request and the security of knowing he can work in this city fills him with something he has not felt in a long time. The receptionist mentions that the guildmaster wants to see him. A man with spiky light hair standing nearby tells Ryoma not to worry. The guildmaster is just a busybody. A large bearded man appears from across the room and calls Ryoma's name. Jack Grange introduces himself as a fellow adventurer. Ryoma introduces himself in return. Jack leans in and whispers that the large man looks like a thief but is harmless. The large man hears this and objects loudly. Jack shouts back. Ryoma tries to stop both of them. In the guildmaster's office, Ryoma sets down the basket and explains his slimes are inside. He opens the lid. The guildmaster leans forward and asks if Ryoma is not a hunter but a tamer. He stares at the slimes. Ryoma clarifies that he only has slimes and uses taming magic as a supplement to hunting. The guildmaster points out that the basket contains nothing but high-class slimes, acid, poison, sticky. Adventurers who have fought these varieties know not to underestimate them. Those who look down on slimes just because they are slimes do not live long. Ryoma thinks that coming to the Adventurers Guild was the right call. The guildmaster confirms he knows Mianya as a fellow adventurer. He then tells Ryoma there is another job he would like him to consider. Ryoma listens. The guildmaster explains the history of the city's public toilet cleaning. The government cut staff to save money after mining income fell. The remaining workers could not finish the work on time, and the government refused to pay until it was done. Then they lowered wages further and blamed the workers for being lazy. The toilets went uncleaned, citizens complained, and the government blamed the workers publicly. Negotiations collapsed. Now the government has dumped the problem on the guild, so that if citizens complain further, the guild takes the blame. The guildmaster says it is deplorable. Ryoma says he understands and will be ready by tomorrow. The guildmaster is visibly relieved and promises good pay. Ryoma smiles and says he is looking forward to it. He thinks of the labor disputes he saw on TV in his past life. Corruption is everywhere, no matter the world. The guildmaster notices his expression and asks what is on his mind. Ryoma mentions he plans to ask the people he is traveling with for help when he returns to the inn. The Duke's family. The guildmaster's expression freezes. He asks quietly if Ryoma thinks they will actually help with a job like this. Ryoma says he believes they will. He recalls how they took him in as a stranger from the forest, cared for him, and brought him along on their travels. They are not the kind of people who will sit still after learning about a situation like this. He is sure they will lend a hand. Back at the inn, Ryoma explains everything to the family. Reinbach listens with narrowing eyes. Sebas stands ready behind him. Eliaria is partially visible, watching. Reinbach's expression goes very still. Reinbach tells Sebas to investigate a potential embezzlement of city funds. The management budget, in their reports, matched previous years, but if Ryoma's account is accurate, someone has been pocketing the difference. Reinbach thanks Ryoma for the information, noting that all his efforts to improve public facilities would have been wasted if this corruption had continued unchecked. Reinbach explains that the toilet system and the employment of slum workers were established by his own father, who negotiated directly with the slums and set fair wages and working conditions. He looks directly at Ryoma and says he will not forgive those who steal from the citizens' livelihood. Elise asks if Ryoma needs anything for tomorrow. He says he has already been making specialized work clothes. The family looks impressed. Reinhardt notes that is why Ryoma was holed up in his room. Ryoma apologizes for not noticing they had returned. Reinhardt tells him not to worry. Reinhardt admits privately that keeping Elise and Eliaria from barging into Ryoma's room was quite difficult. They were convinced something terrible had happened. Sebas eventually had to call Ryoma out. The maids offer to help with sewing. Ryoma reaches into his item box and says he already has the tools. Ryoma shows the maids a thread he made by mixing the sticky slime's adhesive and hardening fluids in different ratios. The maids are amazed by its smoothness and strength and ask to buy some. Ryoma says they can have it. Reinhardt appears behind him and announces they should commercialize the thread too. Ryoma shouts in surprise. Reinhardt explains that the Jamil family has long maintained the cities and villages of their territory, and the public toilet system was part of that legacy. He wants to make the city prosper through commerce. Ryoma understands now why Reinhardt was so interested in the slime products. He agrees to help. Reinhardt bows in thanks. The next day, Reinhardt gives Ryoma the key to the latrine pits and explains there are about 30 of them. Ryoma is moved by seeing a feudal lord working this hard for his people. He tells Reinhardt he is looking forward to it. Reinhardt shakes his hand, a little embarrassed. Ryoma stands before the wooden hatches with his box of slimes, ready. Ryoma suits up, cleaner slime goggles, long gloves, white overalls, rubber boots, and a scarf. A small slime rides his helmet. He stands at the edge of the first pit and sends his scavenger slimes in with a shout. The slimes consume the waste from the walls and floor. Ryoma decides to disinfect as well. He casts mist wash to clean the surfaces, then channels his original electric spell range to heat the water and kill anything remaining. The stone chamber fills with crackling light. 5 hours later, Ryoma uses Identify on the ceiling. It reads clean. He tells himself it is on to the next one. Then his scavenger slimes start shaking. They are beginning to divide, fed by 2 days of continuous eating. More slimes means faster work tomorrow. He can wait. 3 hours later, the count has doubled. 730 scavenger slimes have become 1,464. One even split twice. Ryoma prepares to check their updated levels. The status readout stops him cold. Disease Resist has jumped from level 5 to level 7. Poison Resist, Foul Eater, Clean, Deodorize, and Deodorizing Liquid have all leveled up too. Ryoma stares. Disease Resist leveled up by 2 points. That means there was a disease here that the previous level could not handle. Level 5 disease resist is enough to survive serious life-threatening illness. Something in this pit required level 7 to resist. Ryoma stands in the middle of his slimes, the realization landing fully. An epidemic is brewing inside these latrine pits. Chapter 10, Strategy Meeting. Ryoma crouches in a brick-walled chamber, one gloved hand reaching forward, slimes all around him, and virus-like shapes floating in the air. He looks ready for a fight of a very different kind. Ryoma bursts into the Adventurers Guild and shouts for the guildmaster. He throws open the office door and finds the entire Jamil family already seated inside with the guildmaster. Everyone looks up. Ryoma tells them what he is about to share must not leave the room. The guildmaster says they were already discussing his report from yesterday. Ryoma looks at the family, then at the guildmaster, and takes a breath. Reinhardt shouts when he hears the word plague. Ryoma explains. His scavenger slimes entered the pit with disease resist at level 5. After cleaning, it jumped to level 7. Level 5 is enough to survive very serious illnesses. Something in that pit required more. Ryoma says it plainly. They could have an epidemic on their hands. He apologizes for coming straight from work in his dirty clothes. Elise does not care about the clothes. She grabs his face and asks if he is all right. Ryoma reassures her. He had the cleaner slimes wash him off, clean the building inside and out, and used appraisal until he confirmed no disease was present in the communal toilet above. He did not bring anything here. Elise is not asking about that, she says. She asks again if he is okay. Ryoma blinks, then understands. He thanks her. Reinhardt calls it an emergency. Ryoma proposes the plan. He will continue cleaning the remaining pits with his slimes, but he needs guards posted at the toilets to keep people away until the job is done. Reinhardt stands up immediately and says he will handle it. Someone shouts for him to wait. Elise asks if the slimes alone cannot handle it. Reinbach offers to hire help. Ryoma explains that the slimes cannot clean the ceilings and walls alone. Water magic is required, and involving more people increases infection risk. Ryoma holds up his status board. Health level 7. Life boost and super recovery both at level 3. His resistance to disease and poison is considerably higher than average, and even if he catches something, he is far more likely to survive and recover quickly. His stamina boost is at level 6. He can work for 2 or 3 days without sleep. He says he does not think there are many people more qualified for this job than he is. The family is silent. Reinbach acknowledges it. Finding someone better suited would be a fool's errand. He apologizes for putting Ryoma in harm's way. Reinbach bows to Ryoma, who tells him there is no need. The guildmaster says he will station as many guild members as needed. Ryoma tells them all to leave it to him. Outside, the city sits under a cloudy sky, unaware of what is building beneath its streets. Back at the inn that evening, the maids welcome Ryoma home. Reinhardt tells him to get some sleep. Ryoma hesitates and says he is just going to collect his things and then change inns. He cannot say with absolute certainty he will not get infected. Elise's face goes still. Elise grabs him and shouts that she will not have it. Eliaria bursts into tears. Both maids join in. Reinhardt and Reinbach watch with sweat drops. Luluni shouts that Elise is squeezing too hard. Ryoma turns blue. Elise carries Ryoma off to eat and sleep, refusing to hear another word about changing inns. Eliaria trails behind, still tearful. The next morning, Ryoma and the guildmaster arrive at a large building where a group is already waiting. Mianya shouts Ryoma's name when she sees him. Jack waves. The guildmaster calls the room to attention and tells the 9 assembled adventurers he has an important job for them. They are free to refuse, but nothing discussed here leaves this room. If they cannot swear to that, they should go now. 9 individuals sit at the long table. Jeff the human, Mia the cat beastkin, Gordon the dwarf, Asagi the dragonute, Walana the dog beastkin, Cher and Lapin the humans, Mazelia the tiger beastkin, and Celia the rabbit beastkin. The guildmaster tells them they were chosen for their discretion and their unusually high disease resistance. Jeff asks if this is about an epidemic. Asagi shouts the same question louder. The guildmaster explains. No one has been infected yet, but disease has been found in the neglected cesspits. Ryoma was the first to encounter it. Jeff and Walana exchange looks. A disease that requires level 7 resistance to survive is not something to dismiss. The guildmaster announces that Ryoma will be the one to go in and deal with it directly. Jeff and Gordon immediately protest. Making a child do this alone is a job for 10 adults. The guildmaster tells them Ryoma already cleaned 1 pit yesterday, alone. Mianya says wow to the meow. The guildmaster adds that his disease resistance is the highest of anyone present. Walana asks about the toilets being connected. Ryoma explains that the cleaner slimes that did not eat the filth showed no change in their disease resistance at all. Ryoma explains his theory about the disease being contained in the waste. He credits his grandmother's knowledge, as he has done before. Gordon asks how Ryoma knows so much about it. Celia listens quietly and then asks the practical question. If Ryoma is handling everything himself, what are the rest of them doing here? Reinhardt takes over and explains the plan. The group will split into shifts and guard the toilet entrances while Ryoma works inside. Those with appraisal skill will check him each time he exits a pit to confirm he is not carrying anything out. He makes it clear, this job is more dangerous in its way than fighting monsters. The room is quiet for a moment. Then the spiky-haired adventurer says he was born and raised in this town, and there is no way he is sitting this out. The others agree one by one. Celia points out that their job is much easier than Ryoma's. Ryoma looks at them with slightly watery eyes. Reinhardt raises a fist and declares their mission, to protect this town from a plague. The next day, Chapter 11, Cleanup Work. Ryoma stands before the group with his slimes and pulls on his gloves. 29 cesspits. Every second counts. His physical energy, mental energy, and magic are all at full. Staying awake for 2 or 3 nights is nothing. He is ready.